I'm giving you good sounds, entertainment, and everything galore having to do with the Good Morning Africa Breakfast Show, because this is a Pan-Africa radio station all the way in Johannesburg, South Africa. All right. He is Umich Black.
Yeah. So my name is Mitchell Black. To specify, I am the head of research and policy for Gauteng, province in South Africa for Mzansi. First of all, I'm a son of the cosmic soil. So I born in South Africa, born in Gauteng, raised in Gauteng, spiritually connected to this place, and that's the place where my politics comes from. So yeah, that's who I am.
All right. So what actually led you to tap into politician or being a politics?
Because the world's on fire. There's no real other way to say it. If you look internationally, we've got the climate crisis, we've got these kind of like cyclical financial collapses that are happening all over the world. We've got, even in your most quote-unquote developed countries in the world, you've got absolute poverty, you've got inequality, and South Africa is just kind of like a magnifying glass on the world's problems. And then internally, we've got a problem with old leaders. We've got a problem with a leadership who is out of ideas. They don't know how to fix where we are right now. And I'd kind of argue for the last 30 years they've just been taking ideas from the rest of the world, or rather they've been handed ideas from the rest of the world. So it's time for some homegrown solutions from young South Africans, and it's that kind of whole context. I woke up one day and learned just about how bad things were. Well, I mean, not one day, it took me a couple of years. And at that point I was like, yeah, it's either I get involved and I try and play whatever part I can in the chorus that's making South Africa the country it deserves to be, and Africa the continent it deserves to be, or I might as well just roll over and die, because straight up the future's looking really dark.
So that's the reason to initiate actually Rise Mzansi. Is that the whole reason why it was initiated?
So that was my reason for getting involved in Rise. The reason that Rise was started is there was a bunch of people who came together, and they came together, various civil society leaders, people with upwards of a decade of experience leading different civil society organizations, a couple of people who came from the corporate, had worked long careers and made their money there, and one or two people who had been in politics before, but had never found anywhere that spoke the language that they actually wanted to see in politics. And they got together, and the overwhelming feeling was, we can't go back to the ballots in 2024 without a good option to vote for. We do not want to have to choose between which option is the worst, the least worst, if that makes sense. So Rise was started to give South Africans a credible political alternative that they can trust and that cares about the country. And that's kind of what we do. We're involved in a politics of care and a politics of the soul.
That's actually quite powerful. You know, I go back to you saying that South Africa has been like a magnifying glass of the world's problems, but then internally we deal with so much, you know, and it's quite important, you know, especially the fact that nowadays the politicians that are set in place are people that are actually right now, I don't know, they've been there for the longest time. You know what I mean? And the situation with it being that way, as much as they take ideas from the rest of the world, what are they allowing the youths to say about, what are they allowing the youths to say about the situation in the country? They're not even giving people, the youths in general, the opportunity to actually voice out what the situation actually looks like, because what the politicians right now are doing is that, as you said, they're taking everything from the rest of the world, and you know, history is bound to repeat itself, especially if you put people that have been there for the longest time doing what they are doing, you know what I mean? So I really you want to share something about that?
So like, yes, I think the thing is with the older leaders, and we don't want to cast like shade on old people, right? Old people have knowledge, they have experience. I mean, old African proverb is that an elder will see more sitting down than a child will see climbing to the tallest tree. Right? So there is knowledge in them. But when it comes to kind of decision making in 2024, do I believe that, you know, decisions about digital security should be made by someone who needs help sending an email, right? Like the thing is that when we had the cell phone arrive, the smartphone specifically, which Africa has one of the highest rates of smartphone penetration in the world, right? We had a fundamental augmentation, a change in human consciousness happen. Where now I mean, all of us sitting around this table, everyone here seems to be under about 35-ish.
Yeah.
And all of us, we grew up with like the compendium of human knowledge in our hands, right?
Yeah.
And that fundamentally changes the way you see the world, the way that you think about things, and it introduces a whole new set of problems, right? We're trying to deal with basic problems, like, my personal opinion, any country that cannot provide, or any state that cannot provide to its people the basics of housing, food, water, etc., that's not a state. You're some kind of kleptocracy at that point. So, and I want to touch on what you said, is that we're kind of reawakening, right? And I think that's why we've chosen the term rise in Mzansi.
Okay.
Because the solutions that a lot of African leaders have been taking from the rest of the world are the bad solutions. They're the solutions that lead us down paths of further inequality. They're the solutions that solidify power in government offices, and fundamentally have been slowly stripping away the ability of people in communities around the continent to provide for themselves. Right? A good example of this is policies around seed. International policies around seed. So this is more my opinion, because outside of RISE, I'm also doing my PhD in philosophy, and I focus on deep African thought and its relationship, or how we can think about food production in Africa. So what we've been doing is we've been kind of introducing patents and stuff around seeds all across the continent. It's called the Green Revolution narrative. It's the same thing that happened in India, but essentially they're taking indigenous seeds. European companies come in, and they index that seed, they index its genetic code, and then they say, no, we have the patent on it now, it's ours.
That's crazy.
So you can't grow it, right? And if you're seen reproducing that seed, you can get fines, you can get pushed into the criminal justice system, right? But seed is the beginning of life, right? So at a very, very deep level, the solutions that we're taking from overseas and the way that we're kind of stepping into various frameworks, some of them we can use to our benefit, we just need to negotiate much harder. But some of them are stripping away our ability to provide and like reproduce ourselves each day. So when I say that we're kind of remembering, I think, you know, there was a moment when Thabo Mbeki, he tapped into the African Renaissance narrative, like the idea that we're seeing an African Renaissance. But now 30 years into democracy, people are like, it's failed, right? The European Renaissance took 400 years, right? We're in the beginning of a turn towards Africa, where there is a remembering of the ways, the old, deep things that sit at the bottom of our shared consciousness here, right? And it's stuff that, it's so funny to me that Europe will come up with something and they'll try to sell us a solution, and it'll be like, no, but guys, we did that 1,000 years ago, right? The funniest one for me is like the aggressive marketing of bush getaways, right? They're being marketed today like the black, middle and upper class in South Africa. And it's like, here is your opportunity to get out of the city, to go and slow down in nature. And we're like,
we used to live there.
that was life.
Exactly.
But it's something we need to recognize and push against. How dare you try and sell us back something that you took from us?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a bit more my personal politics. RISE is focused on very, very pragmatic solutions, right? How can we advance what's happening in South Africa? And I think one of the most powerful things that RISE is bringing is a very mature politics. We're actually like, let's recognize the situation where we find ourselves right now. Let's survey what the best available solutions are, see what's going to work for us. Let's source from communities, right? So RISE has always engaged in what we call the politics of listening. And we don't go into a community saying, yeah, we've got the solutions, X, Y, Z, this is what we promise you to do. Because fundamentally, I'm not from Garankuwa. I don't know how to solve Garankuwa's problems.
Exactly.
Right? The people there have the potential, they have the skill, and they have the motivation. They just need to be aided and supported by a caring government to fix their own problems.
So with that said, do you think that the youth, because a whole lot of the youth are only starting to vote this year, so do you think that even voting itself, it has lost its value? Because I mean, it's a debatable kind of a manner having to, even others asking, is it going to be beneficial to me as an individual? Because we've been hearing it's become redundant of political parties coming into being and promising a change, because they're just seeking for that vote. But then just after the votes, everything, it just seems to deteriorate. So do you think that it has lost value regarding to the youth, and more specifically, what is RISE promising to bring upon a change? How is RISE promising to bring upon a change?
Well, let me say this. RISE is promising one thing, that's we're not going anywhere. If we get 0.1% in this election, we are not leaving the communities where we are today. Because we believe fundamentally power lies with people, not with politicians. So instead of trying to identify a good leader who is a young and upcoming corporate leader in Sandton and then deploying them to Mohopong, for example, we are rather saying who's doing the leadership work in Mohopong and how can we support them. Right? We have leaders in our communities everywhere. When it comes to the youth vote, this is something all parties need to address. No one is speaking the language, right? Politics is still just happening in English in our country. And I'm not going to vote for someone who I don't see myself in, right? I don't see either my issues, my wants, my needs, or bigger picture, my dreams, right? And I think that's where a lot of the work needs to be done in politics in South Africa, is we need to be working in the imagination, because we need to, the world that's going to survive everything that's coming down the track towards us, that we're feeding coal into a steam engine and the steam engine's heading for a cliff. That world looks very different from the one that we're in today, and we don't have any examples of what it looks like, and that means we have to turn to dreams. We have to turn to imagination. So when it comes to connecting with the youth vote, RISE is proudly a youth-oriented and youth-led party. In our highest leadership body, so we don't believe in having a single leader, we're not that type of style. We have what's called the National Leadership Collective, which at the moment is about 14 co-equal leaders who together decide the direction that this thing is going to be going in. Of those 14 people, around about 7 or 8 are under the age of 35. And if you look into RISE's organizing structures, across the board, we are a young political party. So when it comes to getting the youth vote out, it's tough, because you're trying to play to, in politics you've got, the older vote is the vote that you know is going to show up, right? They've been showing up for every single election, so you do have to cater to that, because at the end of the day, elections are a vote game, it's the numbers game. But to get the young people out, we've been focusing on the creative industry, right? We think that creativity is our superpower on this continent. And if we just look in the last 4 years, the global impact that Amapiano has had is ridiculous. We're moving people's souls everywhere from something that was born here. Right? We have been culturally exporting stuff out of South Africa for the longest time, but we haven't supported that sector, and a lot of young people identify with that. So that's one way that we're speaking to young voters. The second way that we're speaking to young voters is we really think that a phenomenal opportunity for economic growth, for job creation, for creating valuable livelihoods is the cannabis industry. Right? It's accessible, you don't need loads and loads of money to get into it at like the boutique and artisan level, but we do need a regulated adult recreational environment. One, so that people have markets to put their product into, and two, so that if you get this big enough, the tax base that it creates for the government, and the government badly needs alternative revenue streams, because we are furnishing debt in South Africa to the tune of about R1 billion a day. We're paying debt to overseas, right? So the youth vote is tough, because I think the thing that's really going to get young people to turn out is going to look completely different.
Because also considering the high unemployment rate, regarding the youth themselves, because I mean we've got youth who are sitting down right now with qualifications, with just having that little hope that there is indeed something economic-wise regarding South Africa, but then they have lost that hope. You know, that's why I'm also asking what is the first priority of even a rise, considering the unemployment, yes, you also mentioned it, and also the economy. How do you think that the youth can also, you know, participate in making sure that as much as, yes, we are relying on them to go out and vote, but then economically, this is what you can also do to make sure that you work together with the Rise Mzansi and make South Africa a beautiful place to live in again. Yeah.
So I think this might be a question that I can answer by just talking a little bit about our manifesto and the way that we see the role of government. So we have, what we did is, instead of arriving on the scene saying, cool, here's a whole bunch of politics, what we did is we went around South Africa to over 200 towns, communities and cities, and we had small meetings with people in communities, meetings of between 6 and about 14 people, up to about 50 people at their biggest, and we said to South Africans, well, we just sat there, we are here to listen. We want to get into politics. What do you want to see represented? What are your issues, right? So across the country, the two most popular issues that came up, you'd think it would be jobs, right? The most important issues to people that are affecting their day-to-day lives, substance abuse in communities, especially in low-income and rural communities, one, and two, hunger. Hunger above everything else, right? Because you ask someone, you know, how's it going now? I'm looking for a job. I'm struggling to find a job. There's no work. Oh, okay. Well, you know, why do you need a job? Oh, no, it's because, you know, I'm hungry. I need to pay for food. Well, when's the last time you ate? Yesterday morning, right? And this is a constant thing that was confronting us everywhere we went across the country. So what we realized is that looking for a job is also expensive in South Africa, right? You have no income, but yet you're beholden to a food system that makes you have to pay for everything. You're beholden to a transport system that if you need to go to an interview in Tshwane, you're looking at 50 to 100 bucks. Where are you going to find that money, right? So we need to support young people who are looking for jobs. And that's why what we do is we take a very holistic approach to politics. Our number one priority, or the theme in our manifesto, is leadership and governance reform. Because you can have the best policies, the best ideas in the world. If you don't have the leaders to put them in place, ethical, capable, experienced leaders, you're wasting your time. You genuinely are wasting your time. Why have a government, right? So the first thing that we want to do is we want to get the right people, the most capable people, into the government positions where they're going to be putting the ideas into place. Our second priority is, and this corresponds to Rise's vision. So Rise's vision is we want a safe, prosperous, equally united South Africa within one generation. As I said, we're not going anywhere. We are here for a 20 to 30 year mission. And our second priority is safety. Safety and the rule of law, right? Because say that a young person manages to get a job, by hook or by crook, we're able to get some form of employment. And they're working at a small store, a young business person has just set it up, they're doing well, they're providing jobs for their community, bam, in comes an ATM heist, right? They lose the money, he wasn't able to afford insurance yet, the business had just started up, he has to retrench all of those people, that business leaves that community, right? So we can't talk about job creation without also talking about safety and security. Then, for us, comes the economy. How do we fix the economy? Now, for us, we have a bunch of measures, so please, I'd invite anyone, risemzansi.org, under the plans tab. We have plans for ending hunger in South Africa, and I am serious. We have an actual workable plan to end hunger in this country within 2 or 3 years if we are able to get a majority, right? We have plans for the economy, which we launched on Tuesday. So Ngezo Zibi, our leader, he's the face that will be on the ballot. He launched our plan for the economy and jobs. The previous weekend, we launched a plan dedicated to period poverty in South Africa, to supporting one of the most intimate and unjustly shamed experiences that women in our country have to deal with, right? And we want to see things like women have to deal with a lot of women suffer from severe menstrual cramps, right? Women should have at least or menstruators should have at least 2 days per month of menstrual leave outside of sick leave, paid leave, and family absence leave, right? That's what it means to care for one another, is to make sure that, and this is what Rise says, politics is personal. That moment where you are feeling, where you're getting chest pains, where you're feeling shame, where you're feeling joy, that's a political moment. And our job is to highlight that.
How considerate actually, yeah, it's quite considerate they're having to also think about that, because a whole lot of women do actually struggle and also not necessarily having to go to work, you know, because of certain instance, but then you have to show up. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you do need bread on their table, and not wanting to be in that unemployment rate percentage. So your favorite quote is "Feta homu otware moto," which translates to "pass the ox and hold the person." Why specifically that quote?
Because Spedi is a beautiful language. It's a very difficult language, but it's a very beautiful language. And the first time I came across that quote was in the work of one of probably my favorite working philosopher in this part of the continent at the moment, Ubaba Mohor Mose. Now, that quote to me means when you're faced with the opportunity to enrich yourself, or to save the life of another person, or even improve the life of another person, and I think person there can be taken a bit more broadly, another being, right? You choose to enhance the life of another being. You don't choose to enrich yourself, right? That is, it's the question of moderation when it comes to wealth. And we currently live in a world where it's every person for themselves, hell or high water, go, hustle your way through life, you get ahead, step on who you need to. That is so un-African. It is so inhuman to treat each other like that, as tools in our own advancement in life. We're not here to rule over, and this is Rise, right? Rise is not here to govern over. We're not interested. We're here to govern alongside. We are all in this journey, right? As the world is unfolding moment by moment, day by day, this cosmic, beautiful world that we find ourselves in. What a blessing it is, honestly, to be alive in this moment in history, where we have this potential that we do in Africa.
So are you, I'm sorry to stop you, but are you saying that that's your main focus as Rise in itself, to pass the baton? Because initially somebody once said that prosperity should not stay within you, but it should pass through you at the end of the day. So are you saying that initially with Rise, because obviously we see that with the corruption that's going on these days, a lot of people are letting the prosperity stay with them, but not let it go through them to enrich the lives of other people. You know, and that's one of my questions, because it also taps onto, in doing so, if you guys do plan on doing that, it goes back to the recreational use, the drug use. In majority of all of these places, which also affects the education in itself. I know it's so many questions that I'm throwing in at the same time. Please. But like, you know, because it all ties together at the end of the day. You know, because we go to the drug use in itself, it all starts with education. You need to see how you're actually managing the children. I remember there was a time when majority of these, especially in Soweto, they used to have so many of these after cares and after, you know, things, activities that they could do. You would go out, you'd go play soccer. They used to have libraries where people would go to learn how to dance. You know, they used to have to cater. You know, they used to have these mannerism classes as well. So in looking at that, going back to the whole prosperity, letting it pass through you, is that what Rise is actually looking at, to actually enrich and
round to the prosperity thing? Let me start with the substance abuse thing.
Yeah.
People who get trapped in cycles of dependency are people who are struggling. And it is usually by circumstance. Right? So what we found specifically in Alexandria, when we were engaging there, people were like, yeah, you know, now it's becoming a big problem in the community. And we're like, you know, why? You know, why are people turning towards that? And the answer was essentially, because what else are we supposed to do, right? There's no recreation activities, there's no rec centers, no sports facilities, no music halls, no studio spaces, no ECD, early childhood development, and aftercare centers. So when I'm sitting in a shack across a tiny, like, sewage-filled passageway across from another shack, looking at my friend, we've got nothing to do. So people are turning to that out of boredom and circumstance, right?
Exactly.
But currently, in the way that the ANC has worked drug policy, right? If you are a drug user, you're a criminal, right? We're not recognizing that that person is a victim. And what do we do then, right? If they're a criminal, what do? We spend massive police resources trying to find the person who's got a heroin needle, or, I mean, until very recently, if you know, trying to find the person who's got a matchbox of weed. Like, who are you going to be harming on weed, right?
Yeah.
So then we arrest that person, we put them into the correctional system. The correctional system either kills them or uses that addiction in gang life to push people into way worse lives of dependency, abuse, and violence, right? So the first thing that we want to do is recognize that substance abuse is not a criminal justice issue. And this is what the leading research in the world shows us right now. It's not a criminal justice issue. It's a public health issue. Those people are still our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our mothers, and our fathers, and they need our support. So we want to create systems that are about psychosocial support, making sure that people have routes into rehab facilities, that there are counselors and specifically psychologists who are able to deal with substance abuse, whether it be at the ward level or specifically in schools. You should have, and there's a tie in there to gender-based violence stuff that we're busy working on at the moment. We've got to have places to catch people before they fall into cycles of dependency, and a big one is to minimize the chance for that first time that dealer's going to offer you something, right? And that means you have to create spaces for people to go where dealers are also going to be hanging out. Now I can come around to the prosperity thing. Those plans are going to take money, right? And we believe, just as you say, prosperity should flow back in, but there is no reason, like we have this idea of philanthropists in the world, right? These are the people who are generous and willingly give. They're a very, very small portion of the very wealthiest people, right? And usually when wealthy people give, they give because there's some kind of tax break or some kind of something afforded with it, so they end up making money in the background. So what we want to do is we recognize that, or we believe that the wealthiest people in South African society have an obligation to help South Africa move forward. And that's why in the jobs plan that we released earlier this week, Mzansi has started talking about a wealth tax, right? 1.5%, it's not much. Right? To you and me, we wouldn't feel it, right? These bigger people also won't feel it. So 1.5% on the top 1% of income earners in South Africa on their wealth, right? We do the calculations and we reckon that can open up around about 350, 360 billion rand, right? And that is the money that we want to use to fund these types of programs, but also to specifically fund young entrepreneurs who want to get involved in green industries, right? We need to see the climate crisis is terrifying, right? And we must recognize we have to do something about it. But the whole world needs technologies to do something about it. Why do we not position ourselves as the manufacturer of those technologies, right? The manufacturer of water harvesting technologies, of for our own people and anyone else who wants to buy them, drought-resistant varieties of seeds, right? New age irrigation technology, solar panels. There is so much tech available in this space. And then you've got something like mycelia or mushroom-based packaging, right? You know, if you buy a TV or something that's styrofoam takes 1,000 years to degrade. There are versions now where you can use natural materials to make that exact same shape, but you can literally throw it down on the side of the road, put water on it, within a week it's going to be gone. Right? We are positioned, we have the power, we have the ability, we have the financial capability, if we just rearrange the finances nationally, to make sure that we position ourselves to sell those goods to the rest of the world. So all of these things are interconnected. We need ways to prevent people from falling into substance abuse. If they do, we need ways to support them and get them back onto a meaningful life path. We need to make sure that in either of those circumstances, those people are able to get the education and the skills that they need so that they can start businesses, or they can get involved in public service, or they can get involved in the care economy, right? That is a massive, unacknowledged part of labor that happens in this country, mostly taken up by women, that the government has just chosen not to support, right? Everything from domestic workers through to people who run massage parlors, right? That is all a plethora of care work, looking after the elderly, working in ECD centers. There's no economic support for that. That's where RISE wants to look. What are the parts that we haven't been talking about in our economy? Who are the people that we are actively leaving behind, or worse, just pretending that they don't politically matter? And for us, the biggest group of that is young black women. That's true in South Africa.
So factually, we do know that other people are registered to vote, but then will choose not to necessarily wake up that morning on the 29th of May to, put that aside, even because your vote is your voice at the end of the day, and hence it that others choose not to go and vote. Any motivation regarding or also boosting and encouraging them to wake up that morning, because now we have to work together to bring upon a change, as much as RISE is also looking forward into the future, but then we also, or even RISE itself, would need your vote to make sure that everything is according.
Have you ever been to like a full day festival? Like a music festival, right? Like, it's kind of exciting to go. You get up early with all your friends, you pack your cooler boxes, you mission like a mythic quest to go and do something that you regard as important. And that's how I'd encourage South Africans to see voting day. It's your democratic party once every 5 years. It's the democratic birthday, right? And I think that we should make it a groove day. We should make it a vibe day. Get the friends together, arrange to meet up at someone's house or in a local area where you can. Go together to voting stations, get some gees going, get some energy going. Go and vote, and then come home and party your heart out. Because we have parents and grandparents who died for us to be able to do that. Right? We must not forget the bigger historical context. We're not, in every one of these elections, we're not just voting to deal with the ANC. Right? We're voting to deal with the history of colonization and see who is going to be offering us the best homegrown alternative for what that looks like. And so that's what I would encourage, right? And also, again, it's a numbers game. Every vote that isn't cast essentially translates to a vote for the biggest party, right? When you look at the numbers and how they translate, absentee votism is a massive, massive problem. And we must recognize, young people, I'm speaking to you when I say this, if every one of us in South Africa votes, the ANC is out of power in one election. They're not going to be gone, they're still going to be in parliament, but they are not going to be in the majority. We hold the power.
We hold the power as you as an individual listening into the Good Morning Africa Breakfast Show. Please do wake up and vote on the 29th of May. Thank you so much for coming through. I mean, it was, wow, quite thought-provoking, and quite informative, I also have to admit. So any last words to our listeners?
Everything that we see in the world today is the result of a conversation, of a dialogue. Some people woke up one morning, they spoke to their friends, and they translated those words into their hands, and those hands built the world. What we say to each other matters. And when we speak the truth, when we speak justly, that translates into a just world. And for me, that is the core of Ubuntu. RISE wants to bring Ubuntu back into politics. We had a bad idea that Ubuntu was going to happen by osmosis, by magic. That people were just going to continue acting in a way that maintained that spirit. No, we have to speak Ubuntu, and we have to do Ubuntu day to day.
Ubuntu, yeah, mic drop. Otherwise, thank you so much. I even, kind of AKA'd your name, Mitch. I hope you don't mind. Mitch Black, living at the building, and of course, we also are still going to talk about the elections, because hence said that we are in the election season. Now, right now, I have to play the song because it's talking about the peace. It's talking about South Africa, peace in our land. This is from various artists. See after these.